joining me today ahead of defending their belts in Manchester on July 1st. And correct me if I get any of these mixed up or miss any of them out, Tasha, is the WBC, WBO, IBF, and Ring Magazine super welterweight champion, Tasha Jonas. Tasha, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak to me during a period which I'm sure is extremely busy for you. So, how are things a month away?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a long start to the year. I thought I'd be out a lot sooner than July, especially after such a strong year last year. But I think I must have used all my luck last year. So yeah, well, been a bit of a slow start. But been in and out of camps, hoping to box in March, didn't happen. April show got cancelled. Then it was May. Then it was like wait for June for the big show, and then June obviously changed to July. So yeah, I just want to be out now. I'm getting to the point where I just want to box. So
Yeah, I can understand that entirely. And as you say, it was originally scheduled for June 17th. And we have been quite lucky in a sense that the card has essentially stayed the same. The venue stayed the same. And they had the bonus of Ben Whittaker being on the card now, who I'm really looking forward to seeing in action. The fact that it's been pushed back a couple of weeks, I can imagine, and as you've said there, can be quite frustrating for the athlete. Does that impact your preparation or the intensity of your training in any way?
it has majorly for me in the sense of, like I say, I've been training. I came back from holiday in the first week in January, expecting to be out on the Lawrence Coley fight in March. So, you know, it got to a good 5 6 weeks out, and it was like, oh, you're not going to be on that card, but we'll put you to the Josh Taylor and Jack Cattrall one in April. And then it gets to the end of March, and they're like, okay, the April show is cancelled. We'll put you on in. I said, when's the next show? I want to be on the next one. He said, okay, we'll do it in May. And then they went, well, actually, we've got a big show that's going to happen in June. So do you want to wait for that? And I was like, yeah, it's closer and whatever. I'll do the one in June. Gets to June, gets to May, and then they say, so every time I'm getting, because in boxing we have like stages, like you have your like long drawn out workouts, which just probably just getting back to some form of fitness, probably getting a bit of weight off, and then you have like your hard, like your explosive, your intense, like sparring, everything's like quicker and shorter. And every time I was getting to like the second week of that quicker, shorter stage, then it was back to the long drawn out stage. So it has been frustrating, like I said. But you got to be stay in the gym ready and be prepared for the call up at any time. Which if they call me up tomorrow, I could fight. So that's just the game, and I feel sorry for younger people, or people who've got the opportunity to be on the card, that because camps cost money, and
Mm.
people don't realize that you're putting out an expense, to get to the gym, to pay your subs, pay your training, whatever it is. And you expect to recuperate that back at the end. There's a product at the end, and sometimes there's not, and that can, it's detrimental for fighters who aren't like on big paces and stuff. So for myself, I'm quite fortunate. I don't it doesn't affect me in that sense, but it does affect me just training wise and mentally and physically.
Yeah, I can understand that entirely. Now, you touched on it a little bit earlier, and I think, if I'm not wrong, this is the first time you'll be back in action since the November of 22. And to talk about the year you're coming off the back of, I mean, 3 wins, 3 world titles, and you were named the British Boxer of the Year by the British Boxing Board of Control, the first woman to do so as well, in its history. And something that I was really excited to hear about from you is, and something that has been on my mind quite a lot over the last couple of months, is the percentage of people that will experience getting their hand raised as a professional fighter is so slim. Like, that feeling of having thousands of people cheering for you, egging you on, being in your corner while you've just reached the top of the proverbial mountain of all that work that you mentioned there that you've put in, and you've obtained that at the end of your camp. Um, if you were to explain that feeling to someone, and more importantly, what it means to you, how would you describe it?
But it's hard to put into words. I think, you know, I had 2 world title fights before that, behind in lockdown. So there was no fans, there was no nothing. And it was, you know, it was weird. It was like an eerie feeling because you could hear both corners, you could hear the commentators, it was mad having fights in lockdown. But, you know, this was me third chance at a third different weight. And it was literally billed as all or nothing. And that's what it was. If I lost, there was nowhere else to go. I had to win. It was on the Amir Khan undercard and the chief support. So, you know, that was a, a fight in itself that the whole of the boxing community probably would have liked a lot earlier, but they'd finally got it and someone was going to be proved right. So everyone's in anticipation, you know, the crowd was like, the atmosphere was electric, and then like going into doing the warm-ups and like Sky do this new thing. I don't know whether we've robbed it from the Americans, but you know, they used to just do your ring walk, but now they film you from the changing rooms walking to your ring walk. So as you as I'm doing my things and Joe's going through the instructions and can you do it? Or, oh, you got to be smart. You got to, yeah. And the last thing, because he runs the ring before I go. He goes, the last thing is like, make sure you enjoy it. I was like, is he messing? It's like, is he messing? I'm sweating. I'm like, it's a weird feeling because I sit there and you won't believe me, but I sit there in the change rooms as I'm warming up and I think, why am I here? Like, what am I doing here? Like, oh, someone please just get me a taxi so I can go home.
Yeah.
But then when they say, give the knock and they say, right, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, well, you know, given that, you start getting like pumped up. And so then they knocked on the door and they was like, right, Tash, you've got 1 minute. And obviously Joe's run off and give everyone a hug, and they've run off, and you start getting that like adrenaline boost. And I think as they opened the door, I was like, this is why I do it. And that's exactly how I think in my mind. So then I'm walking to the ring, and because obviously they show it on the screens in the arena, you can hear them getting louder and louder and louder as I get to the thing. So as I get on the stand to start, like my music plays now. The music is Extraordinary Being by Amy Sandy and Girls Run the World by Beyonce. They're my little girl's 2 favourite songs. So I've got like a minute of one, and then it goes into the other, minute of Extraordinary Being, and then it goes into the other. So I thought, right, I'm going to take it all in for that minute. So I stood there and it's, you know, it's quite slow and thinking and just taking it all. And all I can see, I can only describe it as how Beyonce would feel when you look out into the crowd and it's just phones, it's dark, the lights are down, and there's some phones. And then next minute, the fireworks go off and all the pyrotechnics. And then Beyonce kicks in. I just stunned. I thought, right, I'm not going to touch no one's hand. I'm not going to like do all that playing to the crowd. I'm just going to walk straight in and mean business. I'm going to show her I mean business. So I just like stormed to the ring. Obviously we get in, gives all the referees doing all the thing, and like the whole camp we'd worked on, like, you know, she's going to be naturally a lot bigger because I'd moved up in weight. She's just got to keep moving, box, like, you know, that's, yeah, your amateur bread and butter, just move your feet, and that's what I've done. And then at the end of round 1, I just caught her with an absolute peach of a backhand uppercut, sorry, a backhand hook. And when she stood up, I just knew she hadn't recovered. So I was dived. Joe was like, go, dive, get it, finish it. And there was only like a couple of seconds of that round left, so it didn't happen. Joe was like, there's no way she's recovered from that. As soon as you get out, jump on her. And then I did. And then I didn't even see that. Obviously, I'd knocked her down again. And I didn't see that her corner I'd waved the towel, and as if to say, like stop the fight, wave the towel. I was just concentrated on her. I thought, wait, when she comes back, I'm going to run again and just run on her. And then the referee stopped it. So I just turned to Joe and I was like, and then I could hear like someone, she's won. I was like, I just ran to the corner, jumped up, and I was just screaming in the corner. And then like the first emotion that I felt was relief. I was like, thank God. Like, I'd like said to myself, I'm not going to try and prove everybody right. I'm just trying to prove it to myself that I am good enough. you go through things, you look on social media, and sometimes you can get bogged down with some of that stuff. And I was like, no, this was for myself. I would need to prove to myself. So all camp, I had that mindset. This is for me. It's not for no one else. And when it happened, I was just like, thank God for that. And then obviously I was like, absolutely made up for Joe, because like he gets a lot of stick for, like, if we do bad, the first person they blame is Joe. If we do good, like, we get all the praise. It's like, oh yeah, she boxed really well. It's not like, oh, Joe's taught, like, they've got the tactic spot on there. Joe did really well. He's done a good job. He doesn't get that. But as soon as we perform bad, it's like, it's his fault. He didn't do anything. So I was relieved. And then I was like, oh, good Joe. I was like, we did it. And then, that was it. That was it.
That's class. Is that a key aspect of it mentally, is to sort of turn down all the external noise and to focus on the fact that you're proving a point for yourself?
It definitely, it's something that you have to learn. It's because it's hard. It's hard when you must have been on social media yourself, and you like, you scroll down, you're brilliant, you're crap, you're brilliant, and you're like, who just said I'm crap? And you scroll back, and it's just then negative things you'd attach yourself to. So like, people saying you're too old, you're not as good as you was, you're not an amateur anymore, you're not as good as, and it can weigh you down. And I was just like, I forget all that. I'd watched, me and Joe had gone through a whole heap of books. Relentless by Tim Grover. We'd watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and we'd just gone through a whole, like, the playbook, and we just watched, like, everything. I'd read like 4 books. I'd learned about myself, and I thought, right, it is turning down that noise, and I'm not trying to prove anyone right or wrong. I'm just here for myself, and obviously it works. So.
Yeah, 100%. That's something you can definitely take forward, I guess, in any sport, not just boxing. Now, something else I wanted to talk about is just sort of going from my own experience and my own background as well. Is my granddad had a background in boxing and in football, and told all of us grandkids to get involved in sports, but particularly a team sport, because of the lessons and the values that it teaches you, like, working with others, respect, discipline, adaptability. I think adaptability is a massive one, definitely, that I picked up from getting involved in football in particular. Um, with that comes from, essentially, I would say, being around your coaches and your teammates, and sharing that responsibility. Whereas with boxing, I find, I know you've essentially got your coach, you've got your gym, but how does that transfer to boxing when essentially you are the one in that ring and the responsibility lies with you?
So I actually come from a football background myself. Done quite well, played for Liverpool, got England in call-ups and stuff. Went to America on a scholarship. So I've come from that team background, and it's everything that you said. But then there was sometimes, I believe I can honestly put my hand on my chest and say, like, every time I played football, I give 100%. Like, I honestly did.
Mm.
And then sometimes I'd watch other people give 80, 40, 60, 90, 99, and I'd be like, these are taking the mick, because I'm here giving 100% use, and I expected everybody else to not be at my standard, but definitely give what they've got.
Mm.
So it used to annoy the life out of me when I could see that. So when I actually, like, merged into boxing, I thought, yes, perfect. I don't have to rely on anyone else. Um, and even though essentially you do get in the ring by yourself, like you just said, I have to work as part of my team with Joe, who's my boxing coach, but I've also got a nutritionalist. I've also got a strength and conditioning coach. I've also got a sports psychologist, and then there's the lads that I train with in the gym. So you're never on your own. You're still in that team environment. It's just that you have to implement what you've done yourself in the ring. But then that's no different to football. You've got a position to play. You've got to, implement what you know and your tactics to do that. So it's the same thing essentially. It's just that I don't rely on others as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting way of looking at it, because like you said there, in terms of, I know the media may point fingers at your gym or whatever as a game plan and tactics not coming off, but the fighter is the one that gets the light shined on them, you know what I mean? Whereas in football, you know, obviously maybe with the exception of your goalkeeper, unless your goalkeeper's got the ability to
Yeah.
and the back of the net from goal kicks or whatever, but there's 10 other players on that pitch that you share that responsibility with. So it's interesting that would you say it's arguably the same in boxing because again, the whole of the process and the journey is arguably shared as well.
Yeah, I would say yeah and no. Like it is on you. Like there's no one else to blame.
Mm.
But like I said, sometimes your coach takes the slack. Sometimes your promoter will take the slack. You know, so it's not shared between 10 people, but it definitely sometimes cannot be all your fault. I think someone lost at the weekend and people were like, how is he being matched with him? Like who thought that, who put them two together? Why would they think that'd be a good fight? And that's the kind of thing that happens in boxing. So instead of blaming the defense or it's like you're blaming a different part. Like the boxer's ultimately the person who was in the ring and lost. But sometimes it can be deflected to other people.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear, to be honest. And I guess if you take a step back and look at like the media's reaction to things within boxing, that all sort of spills out over due course and in the aftermath of a result. Uh,
Don't
what?
get me wrong. I personally take it personal. If I lost, it's my fault. I've never ever blamed anyone in my life.
Yeah,
Like I take it on. It's the onus is on me. But when it comes to like fans and stuff, it's not always just you that they'll blame.
yeah.
I mean, some of them do, but it's not always. It can be deflected sometimes.
Okay. In terms of some of the values that I mentioned earlier in what you learn through football, I would imagine because you hear so many professional boxers or just professional fighters in general, both current and past, that said going to a boxing gym for the first time or going to an MMA gym for the first time really was the start for them in terms of them finding their identity, discovering values, and finding out who they were as a person. What are the biggest things that you would say that you've learned on the journey that your careers took you on?
Like I say, I started out in football, so I'd learned a lot of values from there. And when I started boxing, I started when I was 20 and I started fighting when I was 21. So I was over the whole, going out to town and boys and stuff like that. I knew because I'd been to America on a scholarship. I'd been, playing for Liverpool and stuff. I knew what it took to be an athlete and I knew what the sacrifices were. So it wasn't something that I was going into blind. I knew that what you had to do. I knew that you'd have to, give up social occasions, going out with your mates, going out for food and all that, sacrifice time with your family. I knew all that. So I think, yeah, it wasn't any shock. But I think with boxing, um, the, and I only learned this recently, is I've like manifested my whole life, and it sounds very like of a cocoon and strange and like out there. But like I remember being a kid and watching, you know, Sally Gunnell and whoever, Paula Radcliffe and all them athletes, and thinking I want to be like them. And then I watched football, and I was like, Mia Hamm, I want to be like her. I'm gonna be her. And then I remember it being Marion Jones, but obviously she got done with the doping scandal. But I was like, she was used to be a good basketball player. Now she's a sprinter. You can do two sports. I want to be like her. And like and the first one I ever did was when I was 4. I watched the Olympic Games and told my mum I was going to be there.
And
So it took me like 24 years, 105 different sports, but I
yeah,
got there. So I think like to have a vision and believe in that vision, even when things go bad, even when nobody else believes it and nobody else can see it. If you can and you work hard, you never give up and you do believe it with your whole heart that anything's possible. And I learned that through boxing.
that's class. That she'll get you round as a motivational speaker. just in terms of one of the things I mentioned before that I found is one of, if not need the most important value that I learned from my involvement in sports and other things as well is adaptability. And you talking that you started off in football and transitioned to boxing demonstrates to me straight away that you you've demonstrated adaptability, that that's a value that you've picked up and been able to transition from one sport to another quite successfully as well. So what was that transition like for you, and did you find it easy?
Not at all. When I was in America on a scholarship, playing a game, got injured, and like I was told I'd never play football again.
What injury was it?
Um, Tore me into my cruciate ligament in my knee.
Common one as
Couldn't
well,
even,
innit?
yeah, I couldn't even stay and like cheer my mates on and watch them week in, week out. You're talking 20 years ago now, so it was, 8 months out, a year recovery, and then you could like train back for 6 months, and then but you're talking 2 years out, and that was just too long. So when that happened, I thought my career in sport was over because I'd done a lot of sports, you know, ran for the county, played netball for the county, done all kinds. But then when I got serious about football, like I was serious. I didn't go do that whole drinking on the weekends with my mates and stuff. I was like, oh no, I've got games tomorrow. And that was in school. I was like, oh no, I've got games tomorrow. Um, so I missed out on that like a whole thing because I was so focused on becoming this Mia Hamm. Um, and then yeah, like I wasn't the greatest academically, um, but I knew that's where I knew America was the place I needed to be, and I knew the only way to get there was to pull my socks up academically so I could pass the SAT to get in. So that helped in that sense. But when I yeah, as I when I thought when I got that injury, I thought sport was over, and I went through a year when I came home of like now looking back, I do probably recognise that I was probably depressed. I'd put on a lot of weight, and people don't realise about sports that it's even in boxing, it's so social. So like you're always at like someone's birthday, their mum's christening, you're always at someone in the team's event for something. So when I'd lost that football, I'd lost the whole friendship group, and um, I, I was quite vulnerable in the sense of I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. All I'd known was sport, and I didn't have that anymore. So I did lose my identity. I didn't, everyone's like, yeah, yeah, Tasha the footy player, and then all of a sudden I was just Tasha, and I couldn't deal with that. I didn't know how to deal with that. I had 7 jobs in a year, and eventually I just thought, right, I need something needs to change. Like I just need to do something. So I just started going to my uncle's karate gym, which got like bags, pads, and a running machine, and some woman used to watch like was in a bit of a rough area. So some woman used to like watch it for him when he weren't there. So he'd give me a set of keys, I'd go and train, and she was just like, why are you always training by yourself? Come to the local boxing gym. And I was just like, oh, shut up. Who wants to go and get punched in the face? But I didn't say it. I was just like, oh yeah, I'll come next week. And after months and months of her bugging me, I thought, right, just to shut her up, I'll go.
Yeah,
And then I went, and I never looked back. But I think it's so daunting because you have with anything, you have so many stereotypes of and expectations of you build it up in your mind of what it's going to be like. And I'm from the like, south end of the city, and the rotunda was in the north end, which is like there was just things as kids we'd never go into the north end from the south end,
really.
and then I was going in as like the like the first female to train with the lads. So I was thinking, I remember being a little girl playing footy around the corner with like my cousins and that. And like the way lads do, they pick all the best players, then they pick all the mates, and then I was the little girl, so I was always picked last. And I used to think, oh, like I know I'm better than half these lads, but these are just picking these for picking sake. And I thought when I went in there, that's what it'd be like. So the first day I was like walking in, I'd meet Ed Dan, and like it was just quickly realised that it just wasn't like that. And a lot of the things that I'd built up in my mind was just like, they were dispelled very, very quick. So I was lucky in that sense. But I have heard stories of, coaches making it purposely difficult so that females didn't come back. I'm talking, you know, 20 years ago when I started. You know, they'd make it hard, or they just say straight up, we don't accept females here. So um, I was fortunate that, yeah, I was very welcomed, I was very well looked after, and I was very well supported.
Good, good. Thank you for sharing that. That was really insightful. I find that interesting that you say as someone from the South End that you didn't go to the North End. Like, I feel that, I mean, I guess it's slightly different slant, but being from this part of the world, you literally can't get away from sport. It's just part of the culture. It's everywhere, which as an Evertonian is kind of hard to put up with at times. But
Heartbreak. Heartbreak Hotel
it
as an
is what it
Evertonian.
is. It is what it is. Um, to what extent would you say that Liverpool and the city influenced the decision making? Obviously, I know you said you had your sporting idols and your role models that you looked up to, but how much of that would you contribute to your experiences of growing up in the city?
So, like, you know, it's always been an argument whether it's you've got it in your genes and your DNA, or whether it's from your environment. And I honestly believe it's a mix of both. Like my family, like my granddad used to say, you have three names in life: one you're given, one you inherit, and the other you make for yourself. And like it's just so powerful that like and but because of like, we come from a huge family, but we wasn't, you know, we wasn't well to do. We were like most of the city, like the demographics of the city. We were like on the breadline. It was, and because of that, you just there's only so many things you can do. You know, we can't we couldn't afford to go to tennis and, you know,
You can.
swim or yeah, or do golf. So the thing that you do is you go around and you put all your pocket money together, you buy a 99p flyaway. They wouldn't be 99p now, but they were at the time. And you know, that entertains you for hours. You're playing Kirby, you know, you're playing all kinds of games, you know, five-a-sides, whatever, you know, till the lights go on
Yeah.
and you go home. And so yeah, it was like inexpensive things that you did. And I think, you know, the hardship that the city's been through, and you know, it's kind of like us against the world. And I know people say that in a negative way, but like I am so proud to be Scouse. And I don't know if anyone else, and we have our bad times and we have bad things, but like the majority of us stick together. And you know, that's definitely influenced how I am as a person, but also how I am as an athlete. Because you know, I won't just if it feels like something's wrong, I'll say it's wrong. If I won't just like lay down and take something, if like I stand for what I believe in, I stick to my morals, and I work hard to do it. I'm not scared to work hard. I'm not even scared of failing. I'm scared of, you know, not taking the opportunities more than anything.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic ethos to live by almost, because that was one of the things that was drilled into me as a kid is like, for example, like when I was at uni and that, like no one really before, I've got a couple of cousins that went to uni, but like my mum and dad never went to uni, but they always said in lectures and stuff, like we get guest lecturers and stuff that had come in. So like David Moyes had come in or Roberto Martinez had come in, like these ex-football managers and players, Roy Keane and that. And I was always told, like, be the first person to put your hand up in the room and ask a question, just so you sort of leave that impact. And it goes back to what your granddad said and sort of making that name for yourself of being someone who's always willing to sort of speak out and just make contact with people so they know who you are, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just it's there's so many people that have been better boxers than I have, but they just can't do what I do. And that's basically the be all and end all. Like skill wise, there's that I've come across so many people that were better than me, but you can't you can't continuously take them knocks and get back up and be that resilient and, you know, live that. So it's such a regimented life,
Mm.
and you do sacrifice a lot, and you don't do this and you don't do that. And you know, there's so many big family momentous family occasions that I just haven't been available to go to, that like it's yeah, it's not for everyone. And I get that.
Yeah. What was the culture shock like moving from here to the States?
Wild in the sense of here, like we've got this kind of ethos here that it's like the taking part counts. taking part, as long as you took part and tried your best, that counts. They don't matter. They don't care what you do, but you need to win. It's all about winning. It's not the taking part that counts. It's about where you're coming in that race, in that sport, in that whatever what the score is. That's what they just care about, the win. And it's probably like it is totally like you see it on like teen movies. If you're a sports person in American school, you're like the superstar of the school. Everybody knows who you are, and like so that and of it like for obvious reasons, my nickname was English. So it's just weird. It was weird, and it was not none of my family had been to university to be able to tell me this is what it's going to be like, or I'd never experienced anything that before, and it was such a long way from home, um, that it was just a total culture shock, because the lifestyle over there is so different.
Yeah, that's I was meant to go before the pandemic. I was meant to get involved in a not an MLS club, but a USL club, which is like a drop down like the Championship to the Premier League, like a USL club, just in terms of getting involved in their media department, because I quite like that mentality of like I understand the whole it's the taking part what counts, but at the same time I feel like it does give you a certain degree of mental edge of if you're around people that enforce winning as the end result, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
do you
the
think that,
only product.
do you think that benefited you in terms of moving forward as a professional athlete?
I do, and it's great for them kids who aren't going to be, them elite athletes, to be given a recognition for at least taking part. It is good, but then I also think there's a lot of kids like myself who I never got praise for being good at maths or good at English or good at you know any of them subjects. The only praise I got was for being good at the sport. So I deserve my flowers too. So if you're good at something, you should get recognition for being good at it, and you should strive not to just be good, but to be excellent. Good's like mediocre.
Yeah,
Excellence is the standard above that.
it's what to strive for, isn't it? I think that. Yeah. I, I think it has its downsides as well, because like you mentioned earlier, I think you sort of project this image in your head of, right, I want to follow this path and this is the goal and this is what I'm going to pursue. But at the end of the day, obstacles get thrown in your way. Like for example, I had a hamstring surgery when I was like 17, which really sort of messed me up in terms of my sporting aspirations. But no, I do think you're right in what you say. How important would you say having the right people around you when you're on this journey is? Because I've been around certain people throughout the course of my life. It's just bad energy, if you know what I mean. They're trying to
Mhm.
sort of sway you from your path. And I feel like in order to make it as a professional athlete, there is so much value in having the correct type of people around you.
Yeah, I don't think I could be as successful as I am if it weren't for me family and friends that was around me. I have, when we was in lockdown, sorry, when we came out of lockdown, like just in terms of the baby, there was camps where I had to be away for a week, to because we were still in like lockdown phases. So the baby would have to go somewhere. My cousin takes her on holiday if I'm in a training camp over the summer. Like last summer, I was in a training camp. She took her on holiday. My uncle took her on another holiday, and there's that support network. I'm not saying just for the baby, but just for me. We've got footballers in our family. We've got bodybuilding professionals in our family. We've got karate six stands in our family. So there's things that I can tap into, and I've got the lads in the gym, Joe, that I can say like, you know, "Uh, what about this? I'm struggling here. What about this? What if this happens?" And to have that like wealth of knowledge and the depth of knowledge to be able to tap into is very important. But then, I the one thing that I will say about the baby is that when I was on GB and I didn't have Mila, my daughter, I was so focused and driven on the result. It was all about the result, and maybe that was the American thing in me. And if I had a bad spot or I'd had a bad tournament, it would wreck my whole time. until I'd go back to a tournament or I'd go back to training. But now with the baby, like I have that mental switch off, and I do just like as soon as I open the door to me flat, I'm just mum. I'm just Tasha. I'm just, but she knows certain hairstyles. She goes, Mum, you miss GB now. I'm like, yes. So she knows there's a transition in who I am. But I think, yeah, as I say, I couldn't do the things I do without the support network, my family and friends, and just, yeah, they support me mentally more than anything. But obviously they help out with the baby and support me in that as well.
Yeah, superb.
I say the baby, she's like 7, but she'll always be the baby.
Oh,
You know what we are.
I've got a 12-year-old sister. She'll always be the baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
You mentioned there that you've got people in your family that are involved in different sports. It goes back to what you said earlier in terms of that genetics and environment argument just blending perfectly, where you've got people of the same genetics in the same environment, you know, being successful at a high level in different sports. Did
Yeah.
each of yous gravitate towards the different sports naturally, or did you all want to be a footballer and then just sort of try different ways, or how did that go?
So my uncles are like a 6 dan in karate. Every single Jonas that's ever been born has done karate since like him onwards. So we all started out in karate. My little girl does it now. I did it. Um, it- his brother is a professional bodybuilder, so his son has now got his pro license. So they kind of gravitated together because that was something they enjoyed as dad and lad.
Mhm.
Obviously Nikita plays football, and like I said, that was just a thing of we just want to play something and we need to be cheap. And she started her own team, got the team, and she gravitated towards football. My little nephew Lee, he's a football player. Literally every picture you pick up of him from maybe 2 onwards, he's got a ball at his feet. And his dad was a decent football player, not in like any pro or semi-pro type, but he was a decent football player. Karate is an A, and so that's our Harris's little girls. Who else have we got? And yeah, so football is a lot. We've got 2 young lads as well that play for Blackpool. Um, and they're in the junior team. So yeah, a lot of football. And yeah, again, that's just probably because in our family there's like big events that we all get together for. Like when that lockdown finished, like we were like, right, we haven't seen each other for nearly 2 years. Let's go to the park. And what we did was play a game of football. We had a family game of football where it was like my generation and like our cousins who were like my brothers and sisters playing all our kids. And when I say you've never seen the light like it in like the competitiveness between us, I can see that it's innate. It's all in us all, and we're not. We're not losing no matter how old they are. We're not letting them win. If you beat a Jonas adult, you've beat them like fair and square. Because not one of us are letting you win, not one of us, and that's from my mum's generation down. She'd never let me win in anything.
Yeah.
But when I did finally beat her, I knew that I'd earned it, and I knew I was good because I'd beat her.
Is right. Is
Um,
there any arguments?
and there's absolute chaos. There's absolute murder sometimes. And there was tackles flying in that game where I was like, whoa, like, these are like academy
Gotta be
kids. Like you
careful.
can't tackle. You can't tackle. We're the adults. You can't tackle them like that. Ollie was tackling me, little niece Casey, who plays for Everton, the youth academy. I was like, you can't tackle her like that. That's her uncle, like proper, like taking it, wiping it out. I was like, no, you can't do that. Like, but like that's how we get together. That's our get-togethers. If we do it all the time. We just go to the park and I'm like, right, let's play a game around us. And that's like sport is how we all connect.
Yeah, that's class. That's class. It seems like to me as well that is an essential ingredient in what keeps you so grounded and so humble. Like you can see it in the media work that you do. You can see it in, I think, arguably more importantly, in the work in the community that you do. That you are just so down to earth and such a normal person. Even I said to you before we started recording, like just how straightforward you were in terms of like, yeah, we'll do this date this time. See you then. You know what I mean? Like there's there's something about that a lot of people don't have. I'm not even going to go as far as to say is like professional athletes, because some people, some I know some professional athletes get lost in the success. It is what it is. But just people in general, some people just don't have that humility to them. But to be speaking to a world champion and to hear how just down to earth and humble you are, like what would you attribute that to? Obviously, I'm assuming your family is a huge part in that.
Yeah, no, 100%. They would never let me get above myself. And they bring me down a peg or two, like comic wise. Like it's like Def Jam comedy in my hands sometimes. Like we just get roasted. There's always someone who's the butt of the jokes, but you just get roasted. And even when I lost, I remember losing to Katie Taylor, and my auntie was like, a couple of weeks later, we was having a family event, and I'd done something to me auntie. She was like, "Don't start, because I punch you like Katie Taylor did," and I was like, "Ooh, too soon, too soon."
Yeah,
But like that's just how we are, and we just yeah, and like it cost. I think that's the scouse in you as well. To be fair though, because it just like I was brought up, it cost nothing to have manners, and like you know. As proud as I am to be Scouse, I'm even prouder to be a Jonas. So,
yeah.
I represent a whole bunch of people um, by having that name and walking around with that label. So, you put your best foot forward and your best chest and all that.
100%. Like, yeah, I can echo that as well. Like, particularly like me nan and granddad on my mum's side always constantly like manners. Say please, say thank you, speak properly as well. That was always a proper one. If I went a bit too deep into the accent, try and like enunciate properly. Um,
Oh, my nan's the worst for she like texts me or she can't text, but she sends a voice note if I'm on Sky. She's like, "Girl, sit up straight." So I have to go like that.
That's funny. Like you mentioned Taylor there, and over the weekend we saw two massive fights go to decision. Chantel Cameron handed Katie Taylor the first professional loss of her career in Dublin, and Devin Haney beat Vasily Lomachenko by unanimous decision, which I haven't seen all of it yet. I've only seen like the first 4 or 5 rounds. But many people are questioning the judges on that one, which wouldn't be the first time in boxing. Um, does that play a part in your thinking before or even during fights that you don't want to leave it to the judges?
Sometimes, and especially when it seems to be happening too. Unfortunately, it's happening too often. And I think there's this thing in boxing where you have to take it from the champion.
Yeah,
And if it rounds close, it'll probably go to the champion because it's they're the champion and you've got to dominate to win the round. That's not the case. Let's You just have to win the round. That shouldn't be a case of they're the champion. You've got to do better. Well, you've got to do better to win the round, but you shouldn't have to do better than better. If you win the round, you win the round. Doesn't matter who it is. But there's also like this thing sometimes with judging that depending on who's in the ring depends on how they judge a fight, and it shouldn't. You just judge a fight how you judge a fight and stick to how you like what you prefer because it is all about preference. And I think sometimes that's where they can get away with it because it's subjective. It's just about what you think wins. And I think sometimes that's what causes the issue because sometimes they'd be like, oh, well, it was the big shots that were landing that we were scoring. And then, somebody else can be in the ring and it was like, no, it was the work rate that we can score. Well, someone just tell me how I'm supposed to win a fight. And I think there needs to be more clarification on how they win a fight. And I think there should. I remember in the amateurs, the coaches and used to all go to like a judges meeting. Now the amateurs weren't much better for judges and scoring, but they used to say, "This is what we're looking for." And I think boxing could help themselves by doing that
yeah,
and saying, "Look, this is what we're looking for." So then the boxer knows because literally, depending on who I'm in the ring with, depends on how I'm going to be because you're always going to have to fight differently depending on who's in the ring anyway. But I mean, there is certain people or certain champions that you think, right, I'm going to have to do more than I should have to do just to get the result.
yeah. I can understand that because there seems to be a certain fascination within boxing that there isn't in the likes of mixed martial arts on undefeated records. Like, so you look at that Devin Haney, unbelievable, absolutely phenomenal. You only have to watch him for fucking 10 minutes and 5 seconds, you see how good he is, you know. But again, I've not seen the full fight, but you think that may have played a part in the decision going his way. Um, And like similarly with Katie Taylor losing her role. Like, what are your thoughts on the way undefeated records are perceived in boxing?
Well, I've lost mine, so it doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah,
But yeah, I remember Savannah in the amateurs. I was going to the Olympics as an undefeated world champion, and it was a burden. Like sometimes it becomes a burden because we are like we've come from a time like an era where we've had Joe Calzaghe, we've had Floyd Mayweather, and they've managed to come out with O's, and that doesn't happen. We have so many greats, Ali, Rocky Marciano, all these people who have come out like Roy Jones have come out with like defeats, but they've bounced back. But we seem to hold on to this thing of like we need to keep our O. And like I say, it just can become such a burden because you're more worried about losing, not because of who's in front of you and how tough that fight's going to be, but you don't want to lose that O. Like the stress of that O, yeah, can take its toll.
that's interesting. That's interesting. Now, Tasha, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and this has definitely been one of my favorite podcasts so far. And I'll start wrapping it up because, as I say, I've got to get off to London early tomorrow. So, like, I know it's important never to look beyond your next challenge, but say July 1st goes swimmingly well, goes perfect, as I'm sure it will. What's next for you? And beyond that, what's the legacy that you're hoping to leave when all said and done?
Good question. I try and stay in the moment because you don't know what's coming and you don't want to know what happens. I remember looking past Obanov and then I lost. And then what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. So I try and stay focused on the present because we spend so much time either worried about the past, worried about what's coming, that we don't appreciate the now and enjoy the moment when we're in it. And I remember messaging all the Olympians saying, enjoy the time, enjoy the time, enjoy the time. Because sooner you look back and it's a memory, you think, "Oh God, I was so focused on the results, I didn't enjoy it."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just legacy. I, just, I don't know. I just want to do whatever makes me happy. Do whatever I can, and be a good person in it. Um, I honestly, I feel like everything after that Nama's fight is a bonus. Like everything that happens, that's the dog snoring if you can hear that. Um, yeah, I just think the Bergholt was just and the care was just, you know, they're all brilliant moments, but from the Namas thing, anything else that comes to me in my life is a bonus. So that's the way I treat it.
That's a great way of looking at it. And Tasha, honestly, it has been an absolute pleasure. First world champion on the podcast, and it couldn't have gone any better as far as I'm concerned. I'm very, very grateful that you took the time to
Big
speak.
boots to fill the next one.
And so yeah, July 1st goes your way, and you'll jump back on the podcast. Yeah, we'll talk about what a good performance it was in victory. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. That's it. See what's
it's been
next.
a pleasure, Tasha. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for supporting the movement and tuning in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We appreciate it.